Good morning and or good afternoon. Just gonna keep things open for a couple of more minutes and wait for some of our late stragglers to join. But we hope you're doing well on this fine Monday. We'll ask you to maybe share where you're calling in from in the chat. I'm personally calling in from the traditional unceded territories of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, otherwise known as Ottawa. And if you haven't, you can check out nativeland.ca, which I'm just going to put in the chat here. And that can give you a little bit more information about the land that you're calling in from. So a few more minutes and then we'll get started. Hi folks, those who've just joined. We're just waiting a couple more minutes for a few more people to show up. Just ask that you share where you're calling in from and feel free to visit nativeland.ca to learn more about the land in which you're situated. Okay. I think in the interest of time, we better get going. And we'll just welcome in the late stragglers as they arrive, and hopefully they can get caught up through the chat function. So super excited here to present a webinar from Eco Canada on the topic of supporting a diverse environmental workforce. With leading change, that we have a lot of conversations about young people who are eager to get involved in environmental work. They're looking for opportunities to do work that feels meaningful to them and that is contributing to the vast amount of crises that we face as a society, whether it's climate change or biodiversity loss, all of these sort of different aspects that we consider sort of wicked problems that are very challenging. So here's an opportunity for us to dig deep into one of the organizations who is trying to connect people with some of those opportunities, and we'll have an opportunity to dig deep into that and to ask some questions as well. So as we get started, I just want to acknowledge that I'm calling in from the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, otherwise known as Ottawa. I'm an immigrant to Canada, and so I recognize that part of that privilege of being able to be a Canadian citizen and an immigrant is to recognize the traditional stewards of the land and to do my part, in supporting our traditional and native peoples across Canada. I'd encourage you to check out nativeland.ca to learn more about the land in which you're calling in from as well. I believe as Canadians we all have a part to play, and getting informed is part of that process. So we'll have sort of a presentation about the program first of all, and we'll introduce our speakers. And then after that, we'll have a Q&A session so that you can ask any questions that you might have about the program. And as well as, contribute some of your thoughts as well. I know some of you are young people and have a lot of thoughts about this, so we'd encourage you to participate that way too. So first, I will hand it over to our speakers for today to introduce themselves and then to start their presentation as well. So I think we'll do Brendan first. If you can introduce yourself, and then we'll go to Emma afterwards.
Sure, just really quickly, everybody. Nice to meet you. I'm Brendan. I'm coming from Kamloops or the Tequila Welcome area as well. And I'm the business development representative of Eco Canada. Go ahead, Emma.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name's Emma, and I am a team lead for our employment programs here at Eco Canada. So excited to chat through some of our wage funding opportunities and the different resources we have available for all of you today. So I'll pass it over to Elsa to take it from there.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Elsa and I'm a senior marketing manager at Eco Canada. I also wanted to acknowledge that Emma and I are joining you from Calgary today, which is where our head offices are located. So Eco Canada's commitment to reconciliation starts with acknowledging our honor and our privilege to live and work within the Treaty 7 territory. Eco Canada acknowledges the traditional territories and oral practices of the Niitsitapi, home of Blackfoot Confederacy, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations. We also acknowledge the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, which include Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. In addition, the city of Calgary is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, region number 3. And as a national not-for-profit organization, we also respect and affirm the inherent treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples across this land. We will continue to honor the commitments to self-determination and sovereignty, which we have made to Indigenous nations and peoples. So again, thank you very much for joining us. At the end of the presentation, we will have some contact information if you want to reach out to any of us that are on the call today. I wanted to go through a little bit of an agenda of what we'll cover. So we'll talk first about environmental employment, landscape, and who is a green worker, some of the barriers that people face to finding employment, and then some solutions on how employers and youth can help to break down those barriers as well. So a little bit about Eco Canada. We are the champions for the environmental sector, and we champion the end-to-end career of an environmental professional. To do this, we have some programs that include wage funding and work placements, training that we offer, as well as post-secondary accreditations. And our labor market research and research team develops fantastic reports that really take the pulse of what is happening within the sector. And just to reiterate our commitment to the environmental Indigenous space, so we do acknowledge all the treaty rights of Indigenous people in Canada and acknowledge the diversity of Indigenous peoples and commit to continual engagement with individual communities in a way that respects their unique culture, customs, and history. As an organization, we work proactively to build meaningful relationships with Indigenous communities on a basis of respect, understanding, and trust. And we strive to uphold the values of Canada's Indigenous groups, our company ethos, and across our departments, including with our Indigenous Bear environmental training programs. A little snapshot of the environmental workforce. Our labor market group has defined the environmental sector as being broken down into 3 subsectors, which include environmental protection, resource management, and sustainability. And at the center of these is the environmental manager who works within all 3 of those subsectors. So the current landscape for job opportunities in the green economy within Canada is that there are 173,000 job openings anticipated to be needed to be filled by 2025. And out of those, around 79,000 are going to be sustainability related, and around 69,000 are going to be natural resource management jobs. Out of those jobs, 43% of openings are likely to be in more entry-level or junior positions. And we know that there is a large retirement gap that is looming on the horizon. So 57% of jobs are going to be more in the mid to senior level roles that will need to be filled to make up for that replacement demand. Our research department also recently put out a report on diversity in the environmental sector. They surveyed over 600 employers across Canada, representing nearly 1 million employees. Green workers accounted for around 8% of those, so around 86,000 roles across the companies that were surveyed. Some of the key findings were that in terms of environmental workers, 6% identify as indigenous, and that's versus 4% of Canada's working population. Around 3% of environmental workers identified as persons with a disability. And we have identified nearly about 18% who were visible minorities. In terms of the gender balance, around 46% of workers in the green economy are women. This is a little lower than the national average of 51% of Canada's working population. So there's a little ways to go there in terms of female representation. And in the age demographic section, we can see that 59% were between 25 and 54. There is 12% in the 15 to 24 year age range, and around 30% were 55 plus. So if anyone has any questions about the methodologies used, this is just a really high level snapshot of some of the findings. Our research group is always happy to answer those questions, and there's more information on our website, which is eco.ca, eco.ca. So I wanted to chat a little bit about some of the barriers to employment that people face, so that we can also help to identify some solutions. So we often find that there's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario when youth especially are trying to get a foot in the door and gain that work experience needed. So a lot of jobs say you need experience to get the job, but how do you get the experience to get the job? We also know that access to education is often a barrier to employment. Not everyone has equitable access to education. And so some of our programs that we'll touch on later are designed to address that. They have, some have post-secondary educational requirements and others don't require that whatsoever. Also challenges to finding employment. So we know that, especially when it comes to youth, persons with disabilities, visible minorities, people from official language communities may have less access to jobs, or the diversity of jobs that Anglophone communities have. Indigenous youth often face some barriers. We'll chat about that in a minute too, and people from rural or remote communities. Another area that we participate in helping with employment solutions is for newcomers to Canada. So the devaluation of foreign credentials is a really contributing factor to labor market outcomes for new immigrants. And also people find that a barrier is just having a lack of Canadian experience, a lack of those networks, and sometimes even communication skills that result in an inability to find those jobs that really showcase their skills and experience. And especially for Indigenous peoples, we know that they often face systemic barriers to employment, again, access to education, but also to technology. So many communities that are remote don't have great internet access. So, even if online schooling was an option, spotty internet connections can really hamper efforts there and put up barriers for people in terms of learning. And challenges to finding employment, especially if they're in rural or remote locations. I'm going to turn it over to Emma, and she'll chat a little bit more about some of these workforce solutions that we offer at Eco Canada to address some of the barriers that we just talked about.
Perfect, thank you. So some of the opportunities we have at ECO to get those barriers going is our wage funding programs. And so we offer a wide variety at the moment. As you can see, there's a few on the slide there. So I'll kind of briefly go over what each one is, kind of the gist of it a little bit. And then if you have any questions after, we can definitely go into more detail, or you can find more information on our website about each program as well. So we offer a few different wage funding programs. Our first one is our student work placement program, which would be our co-op funding. So that's for students who are still enrolled in post-secondary education and are looking for those shorter placements just to get some hands-on skills. And so those placements are looking around 6 to 16 weeks in length. So they are a bit shorter, and they can be part-time or full-time opportunities. We also have our Environmental Employability Pathways program, which we will go into a bit more detail on this one specifically on the next few slides. So I won't go into too much on it at the moment, but it is our newer program. We just launched it back in January. And so lots of exciting opportunities there. And I'll go into more detail on that next. The other one we have is our Youth and Natural Resources. So these are more for our full-time programs. So obviously has to be related to the natural resources sector for this program. And we offer that in a full-time opportunity. So it is around 6 months to 12-month placements, and it would be a full-time opportunity. So a little bit different in that one, as we're looking for youth who are going into more of their start of their career and launching it into more of a full-time capacity compared to those kind of smaller programs we offer for those first two. We also have our Science Horizons internship program. Again, that one's around 6 months to 12 months in length. And for this program, the youth do have to be graduated from a post-secondary education. There is no post-secondary education requirement in the Youth and Natural Resources program or in our Environmental Employability Pathways. So there are some differences that go between each of the programs. So those are our two kind of main full-time programs we offer at the moment. And the wage funding for that ranges from around 80% of the wages are covered up to $25,000 for that Y&R program and the SHI program. And then we also have our new program that will be launching is our Environmental Foreign Talent Development. So this program aims to address and remove the barriers to employment that are faced by highly skilled newcomers to Canada. So newcomers to Canada are amongst the most underrepresented and underemployed segments of the labor force. And through this training and employment program, we aim to help newcomers and employers through that transition period. So this program would be available for those who are underemployed or unemployed. They'll have the opportunity to go through a 3-month training program with us and then move on to a wage funding placement with us after that, with the goal of having some sustained employment at the end of that program. So that one's a little bit different than what our other wage funding programs is. It's a little bit more involved with the training program at the beginning, but also a great opportunity for the programs we offer. And then we also have our Indigenous environmental education programs that can go into a little bit more detail later on as well. So next slide, I think we just have a little bit more about the purpose of our wage funding. We can go to there we go. So how do these wage funding programs contribute? So they ensure we have a skilled and diverse workforce, lots of opportunity involved in there for employers to take on new talent and youth in the environmental field. They're inclusive and they're designed to facilitate employment for all. And they're skill-based training. So training and work experience rooted in skills development. So as Elsa was kind of hinting at before, we do kind of see that gap with not having those skills. And well, how do you get skills? You need the experience. So we offer these programs to kind of help youth have a kickstart into their new employment. So all of our program qualifications for the employment supports are set out by the federal government, and we work closely with them to advocate for inclusive program eligibility. And our success we hopefully see is programs without age limits, programs for those furthest from employment, and inclusion of additional social supports. So lots to still come, but we're proud to offer these supports right now. So I'll go into our main program that we're here to kind of share more information about today, which is our Environmental Employability Pathways program, or EEP for short, because that's a bit of a mouthful. So we do currently have applications open for this current fiscal year, although they are filling up quite quickly. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So at the moment, employers can receive up to $15,000 in wage fundings. So this program aims to help youth facing barriers to obtain work experience in part-time or full-time roles up to 40 hours per week. So there is some flexibility in the amount of hours they work, but they obviously can't go over that 40 hours. This program is focused heavily on employing interns that are furthest from employment. So we do have prioritized funding for those who are young women, a visible minority youth, indigenous youth, youth living with a disability, or official language minority communities and populations. So this has been a great program to launch so far. Next, I'll kind of go into the details of the funding and a little bit more about how everything works. So for our EEP program, the funding is available for a wide variety of positions. So we don't have as many kind of strict things on this program. Not sure how to phrase that one. So in some of our other programs, we do have quite strict guidelines of what kind of roles we can accept. In this program, it can be science, technology, engineering, arts, math, business, or administrative positions. So we are still looking for an environmental tie, but there is a lot more flexibility in what we would accept in this program. And there's also additional training supports available. So inclusive of that $15,000, if you were only to make $14,000 in the placement, there could be an available extra $1,000 to meet that $15,000 that could be used towards training and support development. So that is kind of a bonus to the programs as well to help just kind of upskill youth in that department. So a little bit more of the nitty gritty of what this kind of looks like. So for this current fiscal year, which our fiscal year ends March 2022, the wages are covered at 100% up to $15,000. As I mentioned, we are getting close to being full for this current fiscal year. You can still apply if you've had someone who has started at your organization or you started at an organization from November 1st, 2021 onwards. We may still be able to fund those for this current year. Going into next year, which might be the more likely since we're getting kind of down to crunch time here with time. Next fiscal year, which will start in April, the wages are covered at 50%, but still up to that $15,000. So just to be aware, there is a little bit of difference between the 2 years we're going into now, just so you're aware when applying for funding. And then again, for this fiscal year, placements can start on or after November 1st and can run up to March 15th. And then placements can continue after that March 15th date. We just wouldn't be able to provide wage reimbursement past that 15th date. So just a few little things there that come with the funding. Next, I'll chat about just the eligibility criteria a bit more for both the youth and the organizations. So for a youth to apply for our programs, for all programs except for our co-op program, they must be between 15 and 30 years of age. And so those guidelines are set out by the federal government for those restrictions there. They must be a Canadian citizen, a permanent resident, or a protected person as defined by the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. They must be legally entitled to work in Canada and legally entitled to work according to the relevant provincial, territorial legislation and regulations. And then the last requirement for youth when being considered for any of our wage funding is they must be a new employee to the organization. So if they've already been working there for a few months or a year and then apply for funding for the next 6 months that they want to continue working there, unfortunately, we can't fund those positions. So it has to be a new role and a new position at a company to kickstart the funding. For an employer, they must be a Canadian-owned business or a Canadian subsidiary. We focus on small to medium-sized businesses, so looking at those that are less than 500 staff. We do have the funding available for post-secondary institutions, and the employer must be able to provide a quality employment opportunity. So a little bit there on overall criteria. From that, how do you actually apply for the wage funding? So everything can be found on our website, as you mentioned, for the Environmental Foreign Talent Development. That is launching soon, and you can jump onto our waitlist. They have the link there, and we can certainly share that on later too. But when you're applying for any of our position or our wage funding opportunities, as an employer, you must be able to provide general salary information, a detailed job description, a strong training plan. So we know that there's been some effort put in, and we know that it's going to be a quality opportunity for the youth. And just some general information that we require to review an application to consider if it's a good fit for the program. From there, your application would be reviewed by one of our coordinators, and you would receive a status update in around 10 business days. So they would either let you know that you're approved for the funding, they might need more information from you, or they might decline it if it's not a good fit for the program or if we're full in the program at that time. And then if you are approved for your application, you would have 30 days to hire a candidate. If you'd already hired a candidate before then, that's great. We can go ahead and kind of start the process. But if you're waiting on the funding to be approved prior to hiring a candidate, you have those 30 days that the funding's held for you prior to going through with the rest of the placement process. So next we'll go over kind of the expectations during the placement. So a little bit what it looks like if you did get approved and you're currently in it in the organization. So depending on the length of the placement that we offer, say if it's the full 12 months or if it's a little bit shorter, there's anywhere from 1 to 4 payments that are provided to the organization throughout the term of the placement. So again, if you're at that 12 month, you're probably going to get the 4 payments. And if you're a little bit shorter, you might just get 1 or 2 payments. So just a heads up for that. And then we do require progress reports from both the organization, or the host as we call them, and the interns before each payment is provided. So just a little bit of a report to go through some questions, let us know how things are going, if there's anything we can assist with, any resources we can help with. So we do require those before processing any payments. And then also we would need pay stubs and everything like that. We also have just general agreements that you would have to sign prior to starting your application with us, and also be available for monitoring calls and our site visits throughout the placement. So those are just opportunities for us to check in, see how things are going. And again, if there's any resources we can provide, we're happy to kind of jump on board and help out throughout that whole process. So that's a little bit about what the wage funding side of things looks like and the programs we offer. I'm now going to pass it over to Brendan to take us through some more information about our resources.
Awesome. Thanks, Emma. So as Emma said there, wage funding is just kind of one portion of what Eco-Canada does. We also have a large portion of different availabilities. Our real goal is to be the partner, like Elsa said, for the environmental industry, to really aim at helping not grow just businesses, but also people in that industry as well. So a large part of how we do that is through our training. Is for soft skill development. We have 2 kind of different avenues. So we have learning on demand and live learning, which is more workshops. And everything we do is kind of applicable to everybody, as in there's not a specific genre that we're going after, because we work with such a wide network of hosts and students as well. So we'll have technical writing, project management, communication, all those softer skills that are useful for anybody in any kind of role or position, and it can help them in their career in the future as well. So we also do custom recruiting or custom services as well. We can go to the next slide there. Our consulting services. So this is more aimed at helping businesses grow and expand. So some of our consulting services is HR, or human resources consulting. So helping hiring and managing and finding the right people. We recognize that smaller companies might not have a dedicated HR person, and this is somewhere that we can jump in and help. So we can help find the right person, tell you what questions to ask, and really take all the little work and guesswork out of finding the right person, while still leaving you empowered to make the decision of who you want to hire too. With our marketing consulting, we're really looking to help you increase your brand awareness. We have a great voice in the environmental industry, and we have an awesome marketing team. And we've worked with different communities or different universities like SAIT to help do their marketing packages and brand awareness as well. So we can kind of help get your brand to the next level. And then with indigenous consulting as well. So we think that's something that's going to be super important in the future. So more being helping reach out to different indigenous nations and making sure you have an indigenous hiring policy as well. And kind of having that inclusivity that we talked about, that Bo talked about at the very top here of the talk too. So anything that you're kind of looking for in terms of special consulting stuff, we're happy to help. If we don't have something built right now, then we can always design something and see how we can work together and work with you too. Next, I think we have our EP employer that we're talking about here. So this is more your opportunity to say that you are a partner of Eco-Canada and show that your expertise. So not only are we going to help you like enhance your HR strategy and all those kind of basic parts, but it's more saying that you are going to partner with Eco-Canada to put the environment first, and that you're a leader in your area as well. So you get recognition with our EP employer certification and seal everything. There's a code of ethics to follow that you say that you're going to follow as well. So there's a lot of things there, just showing that you are a leader in that environment as well. And then lastly, we have BEAR. So BEAR is our Indigenous working relations as well. So it stands for Building Environmental Aboriginal Human Resources, and it's specifically designed in community training for different Indigenous nations. And it's really job focused and job relevant. It's highly customizable, short-term, and employment focused, as we're talking about here. We really braid the Western science with traditional knowledge and bring everything in together to make sure that you're not just getting a Western kind of outlook on it. You're getting elders coming in and speaking to the different learners as well, to make sure that both sides are represented and that everything is really focused on building that employability as well. So if what we found is that there's different nations that we'll go in and work with that are looking to build capacity among their different Indigenous youth, because there's different projects working there as well. So they're all environmentally focused kind of career paths and options too, where it can be like contaminated sites, regulatory research kind of options as well. But very highly customizable and very career focused. In terms of becoming a bear trainer, we're always looking for experts in their field to deliver some high impact training. And it's another revenue source for your business as well, if you can deliver that too. So what we do is we take a look at your experience and say, okay, these are the different courses that you can teach. And then we come and help witness that and make sure you're doing fine on your first day as well. So those are kind of a basic on some of our courses and our services as well. I think we have time for a Q&A here at the very end. So if we have a bunch of questions, we're happy to kind of go over those. We have Emma's in my email here, so you can reach out to us directly for sure if you're looking for more questions. But if we have any questions now, I think we'd be happy to answer those as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Brendan, Emma, and Ailsa. So as Brendan mentioned, we do have some time for some questions, and I'd encourage people to hop on video and ask their questions that way. Although this is a safe space, so please go ahead and use the chat if you'd like to do so. I also have a couple of questions that were sent in from people who were not able to attend. And so I've got those on deck here as well.
Cool. We can start with some of those, Bo, if you have them. Oh, no, we have one from Nikia. How am I saying that?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, hi. So yeah, great presentation. So I have some questions, and I also have some like ideas. So around the programs for newcomers, like I'm connected. I'm originally from Iran, and I'm connected with a lot of the Iranian community that comes in. They're in that space where they're not yet like permanent residents, so they don't qualify for a lot of things that require them to be permanent residents, but they are, of course, still seeking opportunities to work. So I was just wondering if you've kind of considered that. And then also in terms of like reaching newcomers, have you thought about going through more like community groups, or like I know you must probably connect with like the settlement agencies, but if you've considered connecting with more like ethnic community groups or like kind of more informal networks, so that you can reach people that maybe they haven't learned about some of the programs available out there. So yeah, that's kind of my first question.
I can definitely speak to some of those points too, and I think they're great suggestions as well. We did what we now have as our program for newcomers used to be called the Immigrant Bridging Program, and we ran it as a small pilot program a couple of years ago. And when we did the pilot, we did work with immigrant serving agencies to get the word out about the program and the opportunities. We really saw a great uptake on the training side from newcomers who wanted to really, get into this program. It filled up pretty quickly on that side. Where we had to do a lot more outreach, I find, was actually with the employer side, because one of the goals of this program is to really help employers to shift perspectives and kind of change attitudes around hiring newcomers as well. And so that's a huge goal of the program for us, is to really get employers on board with this and give them the confidence too that these are highly educated, highly motivated, super competent folks who can be a real asset to their organization. I think it's a fantastic suggestion for us to work with some of those informal networks. And I think we'll definitely be keeping that in mind when we're launching this program, which will be early April.
Awesome. And then my second question was, and I asked this earlier in the chat, is just how are you kind of defining an environmental professional or like an environmental company? Because in a sense, any organization can have an environmental impact. And so like looking on your website, I noticed that you focus a lot on the natural resources and forestry and mining and things like that. But how about things like agriculture, for example, which is a sector that really like needs that like transformation and also like even the skills training to become more sustainable, let's say.
That's another awesome question. I'm happy to take a run at that. And then if Emma and Brendan want to join in with their insights too. Our research group and EcoCanada as a whole now, we recognize that environmental work spans every single industry and almost every occupation. And that's mapped against occupations listed by Statistics Canada as well. So that being said, some of our language has even pivoted from environmental workers to, sustainability workers, because in recognition that, traditional environmental work was considered, consulting, maybe it's remediation work, contaminated sites cleanup, natural resource management. We're broadening the definitions of who is an environmental or sustainability worker within Canada, to be more inclusive of that, and knowing that legislation and policy really drives the change in the nature of work as well, with more companies being held to regulatory standards and legislatory, requirements. It's become more essential for companies who wouldn't maybe have been considered environmental 5 or 10 years ago to really engage with hiring people who have the knowledge to operate within this sector as well. So I know if Emma or Brendan want to speak to that any further.
No additional comments on my end. I think you covered it all there, but if you have any further questions, let us know.
Brilliant. Let me go to one of my submitted questions. So this one's coming from a student, and they ask, as a student looking to start my career soon, I am really confused about all the different possibilities that are open to me coming out of the gate. I'd love to hear from the EcoCanada folks about which sectors of the economy they're most excited about, or which areas they see the most growth coming in the coming years.
I can touch on this as well. So our research team, I can't stress enough how amazing the work that they do is, because we have reports that really do highlight some of these areas of demand. So we put out a labor market outlook on a yearly basis. So that shows us we break it down into a supply model and a demand model. So the demand model shows the demand for different environmental roles within different industries. So I'd really encourage any students who are, close to graduation, or they're considering their, future career in this sector, to take a look at those, because it'll kind of give you a guidance on where there are opportunities as well, which roles are most sought after at the moment. So we know for sure, like, there's a need for civil engineers, and civil engineering can span environmental work and non-environmental work as well. That's just one example, but these reports really kind of break it down at that level of occupation.
Yep, just to touch on what Elsa said there, I would also say we have resources at EcoCanada So we have something called a EPT student, which stands for Environmental Professional in Training Student version. And it's free, and it's for students. They get access to most of our trainings, and they get their first year of EPT waived. And it helps you plan out your career path as well. So that's something that I would definitely take advantage of if you're a student in university and you're looking and curious about where you're going to go afterwards. Well, it can kind of let you know and build out a career path for you where you want to be in the future.
Awesome. That's great. I just want to encourage, if you have a question, please use the raise hand function or mention it in the chat so that we can get to you. Got another question here. This one is from somebody who's working in the oil and gas sector. Do you have any advice for me? I'm currently working in the oil and gas sector, but would like to make a transition to working for something that's a little bit more green. What kind of advice do you have for me?
I can jump in again. Apparently Ilse's go-to answer today is research. Our team's been working on some workforce transferability fact sheets, so that might be a good jumping off point as well. It depends on kind of your role within the oil and gas sector, but we know that, you know, energy is going to be a massive part of the green transition, and will play a role in the green economy. So there are opportunities there for career transitions. We're working with a lot of post-secondaries as well at the moment, who are really ramping up efforts in this area as well. So I'm working with a post-secondary that is hosting, now has developed an integrated water management diploma, and the student demographics span a range of industries. So there's quite a few people from oil and gas who are going through that training to kind of, you know, take their existing knowledge and pivot into a new role that's more sustainable, that really puts a lot of emphasis on care of our and management of our natural resources. So it really depends on your interest. If there's an area of environmental or sustainability work that you're really excited about and passionate about, I'd encourage you to look for maybe some training opportunities that could help you transition or transfer your skills into that line of work.
I can also jump in and kind of add utilizing the wage funding opportunities as well. So as a candidate or an intern going into a new opportunity, they can get pre-approval on our website for some of our wage funding programs. And that can also just be an asset if they're trying to make that transition and are having a tough time having organizations kind of taking that chance to work when they're going into a new field, having kind of, you know, that pre-approval of wage funding and knowing that maybe perhaps 80% of their wages are going to be covered, that can kind of help organizations take more chances on some of those youth who are maybe doing a bit of more of a transition into a workforce. So yeah, just also utilizing those wage funding opportunities from a candidate standpoint as well.
Awesome, that's fantastic. Thank you both. Do I have some raised hands here? Yep, we've got Rodrigo, and then we'll go to Sarah afterwards.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for the presentation, taking the time to meet us. I had a question about the EEP program. You guys mentioned that this fiscal year, of course, is coming to an end. Is it possible to start applying for the next fiscal year, or do we have to wait until this one ends?
Yeah, so right now we don't have applications open for next fiscal just because we're wrapping up this current one. So we expect kind of in the next few weeks that the next set of applications will launch. So just keep an eye on our website and our social media, and we'll be for sure sharing that once applications for next year open up.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Great, and Sarah.
Hi, everybody. Sorry I was late too. I'm Sarah. I work for the Aboriginal Housing Management Association. And one of the big challenges I'm noticing with the demographic that we serve, which is mostly the indigenous population in British Columbia, is that there's really no funding available for those kind of skills upgrade courses. We have a lot of indigenous youth that complete training programs in the trades and are looking to figure out how they can transfer those skills into like the green building sector or other sustainability related sectors. And there's absolutely no funding available to complete additional courses through like CIET or Passive House or anything like that. And I was just wondering, like, is Eco Canada able to like support like lobbying for additional funding for this kind of like bridging the skills gap, or are there other opportunities that like BIPOC folks are able to access that, you know, maybe I'm unaware of?
Yeah, that definitely could be, Sarah. We could definitely take a look at that more. So with Eco Canada, especially with our BEAR program, we really help with the funding support because we understand that that's kind of the major source of friction for getting something like this started. So we sometimes do have funding availability where we can put on the training from funding from the government. And the other option would be to work with you to secure funding beforehand too. But all of our training is very short term, so that it's not a ton of funding that's needed that way. But yeah, no, definitely we have different training and funding sources that we go to and we help with that for putting on these different courses for BEAR too. So I'd be happy to connect with you afterwards and talk about what that looks like too.
And I would add to that what Brendan just mentioned as well, Sarah, in that we never stop advocating for new funding sources. We're always going after new opportunities to get programs developed and built. One of the initiatives that we have right now, actually, that I'm like may have a connection with the communities that you're serving and the demographic, is that we have a new partnership that we are just launching. Actually, the pilot is starting today. It's with Carleton University, and it is an Indigenous entrepreneurship program. It's a short-term program. It's free. It's completely funded by Eco Canada. And that's a pilot that we're doing. And then we're hoping to offer more of these certificates, essentially, is believe what the participants will obtain through this. So if they have those skills that they've just come out of a trades program and they're thinking about starting up their own small business, or they want to have that entrepreneurial mindset and learn more about what it takes to get into the business side of things, this would be a great program at no cost.
Awesome. It's a great question, and thank you for your answers. So we've still got a few minutes left if we have any more questions. I can also ask, I've got a couple more here that were sent in ahead of time. So why don't we start there? This question is just about skills. Seems like this person is just curious about what kind of skills employers from Eco Canada's perspective are looking for. I don't have information on if they're still a student or not, but presumably they're earlier in their career and they're looking to bolster their resume.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely touch base on this a little bit, and then we can have Emma jump in too if she finds anything, or Elsa. From everything that I've heard, usually when interns or co-op students come out, they're really well educated in their field, so they really know exactly what they're talking about. Like they went to university for 4 or 5 years, whatever it might be. But it's usually their first work placement. So those soft skills, so project management is such a big one we've really found. It's the soft skills that they're a bit rustier on, that they need a little bit more help with. And just learning how to communicate effectively with everybody, and then technical writing. So that's really why we offer those different courses, is because those are all the skills that we found that hosts or organizations are looking for.
Yeah, I would agree with Brendan. We kind of periodically review all of the reports that come through from our work placements and kind of see what the general themes are. And majority of them kind of stem in that soft skill building and just those kind of general skills you don't learn so much when you're in school. So yeah, soft skills is definitely the key one that people are looking for.
Excellent. We've got a raised hand here.
Since there's so few people on the call now, I figure I'll ask all my questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah. Thank you.
So I think I think the work you guys do is great, and I'm super grateful that you guys are investing in these new programs, especially around diversifying the workforce. I think that's really important. So the Aboriginal Housing Management Association, we basically manage all of the assets for off-nation Indigenous housing in British Columbia. And obviously there's a big push to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from the residential building sector through energy efficiency, retrofit and renovation projects. And I think one of the major challenges we're facing as an industry as a whole is there's a lot of people trained in the trades and traditional trades work that don't necessarily have the skill set to build high performance energy efficient buildings. And then there's a lot of great, brilliant engineers and architects who definitely know what they're doing, but are also not the people on the ground doing the renovation projects. And there's this missing middle piece where we can't find anybody to do energy audits, building condition assessments, install heat recovery ventilators, maintain new energy efficient equipment and technologies. And I'm not seeing training programs for these people. And I'm not seeing a clear pathway for either people in the trades to upskill and get into this sector, or young people as students being able to envision themselves in this future career world of high performance buildings, right? And so we've been trying to recruit building condition assessors in our organization for the last 5 years, and we've had one successful applicant. We've partnered with universities. We've tried to do the co-op kind of placement route. We've put on our own internal training programs to try to upskill the Indigenous workforce in British Columbia. And sometimes it feels a little bit like I'm banging my head against a wall. Nothing is really producing the right outcomes. And I think we've had some great conversations with Energy Efficiency Canada about how we might be able to build more of a national coalition of allies who are all kind of working in this space, in the sense of we are aware of these issues and we want to reskill the labor force, and we specifically want to diversify the labor force. And I guess I'm in a roundabout way wondering is there a role for Eco Canada to participate in those discussions? Or I don't know if there's things happening in other provinces that we could learn from here in British Columbia. I think it's got to be not just BC that's dealing with that missing middle skills gap.
For sure. No, and that's great to bring that up, Sarah, because that's exactly where we're looking to fill those different voids or the skills gaps that you might have. So for example, we are building a green energy technician program for the BEAR program, specifically designed for solar and wind for remote Indigenous communities up north. So building these different programs that are needed, but we need to have input from experts like yourself who are in the field and see these different voids that we need to be able to help fill. So we're always interested in building those different programs and then working with the Indigenous nation to build capacity so that they can actually work on these different projects in their own territory and land as well. And we already have
it's just it's not just on nation, right? Because in British Columbia, it's over 75% of Indigenous people are living off nation right now because there's such a housing crisis on nation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, totally. So that's something that we definitely feel that there's room for us to jump in and help support as well. We just need to know about the opportunities for sure.
Okay, great. I put my email in the chat. I'd love to like just follow up with, I don't know, just
Yeah,
building
no,
a better
for sure.
relationship and figuring out like how we can take advantage of maybe, or just collaborate.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I'll definitely reach out.
Thank you.
Great. So just got a few more minutes left. So if you've got a question, now would be the time. I do have one last question to ask here that was submitted, and this is just curiosity about how you decide sort of which organizations to work with, and if you have certain priorities related to your funding. So I think it's just kind of about how do you decide which priorities in terms of the economy or in terms of the greening of the economy to work with. Sorry, I'm just kind of trying to interpret the question as worded a little bit strangely, but hopefully that makes sense.
I can take a stab at it. So for our wage funding, we don't have any kind of specific priorities as long as the organization meets the eligibility criteria. And obviously there's a strong environmental tie for those positions. But outside of that, we don't have kind of too much involvement in prioritizing those organizations. So I would just say for anyone who's looking into those fields and isn't too sure. Also, our job board is a great resource for students who aren't really too sure where to go, to take a look on there and kind of see what the different job opportunities are like and kind of get a feel for what might be of interest for them. But I don't know if Brennan or Elsa has anything else to add on for that question.
Nope, that kind of makes sense. Like we're like Emma was saying, so we're always interested in partnering with everybody in the industry and bringing everyone into the fold and helping with that communication and those talks too, for sure.
All right, fantastic. A couple more minutes left, so maybe one more question from either Winner, Rodrigo, Sarah. Any of you have any more questions you'd like to ask before we wrap up the session? Okay. If not, then I think we'll call it there. Thank you everybody for joining. This was very, very informative, and the session has been recorded as well, so we'll be sharing it on YouTube afterwards. Happy Monday to you all, and we hope you have a fantastic week. Thanks everybody. All right, thanks folks.
Thank you,
Much
Bo.
appreciated. Thank you very much. So as soon as that's posted, I'll share the link with you, and feel free to reshare it or use as you see fit.
I appreciate it. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, you too.